Hello there. I promised you that I would help you to identify the 666 in the book of Revelation chapter 13, and now it is identical to the 1335 days in the book of Daniel that has been kept secret up until now. Everything in the book of Daniel matches everything in the book of Revelation 13. So I'm going to show you the 666. It's the number of the beast. And it says, let the one who has intelligence calculate the number of the wild beast. For it is a man's number, and its number is 666. Every man has a number. It's normally put on his gravestone. It's from the day that he was born until the day that he dies. And that is his number of days. And it's the same with the beast. It is how long it is in existence. So it says, let the one who calculates, let the one who has intelligence calculate it. I said that it was identical to Daniel chapter 12, the 1335. There are two keys in the book of Revelation that helps us to see exactly what it is. Remember, he's talking about the wild beast and the 10 kings, right at the end where they war against God's people. So if you turn to Revelation 18 that describes that, first of all, going back to 17, from verse 12 to 14, it talks about how this wild beast and the 10 kings battle against God's people at the very end for that amount of time, as you'll see. It's 1335 days. Verse 18 is the first clue, because God's speaking to the wild beast and who is in control of these 10 kings. The kings are the entire inhabited earth. And this is what he instructs this wild beast to do to Babylon the Great. In verse 6 of chapter 18. Render to her even as she herself rendered, and do to her twice as much. Yes, twice the number of things she did in the cup in which she puts a mixture. Put twice as much mixture for her. He's actually instructed this beast to do twice as much. Now, if God asks us to do a week's work, you'd expect a week's work. But if he said, I want you to do 2 weeks' work, twice as much, because he is a loyal God and righteous and just, you would expect twice as much time. And that's what he's given the beast. He's told him to do twice as much, he gives him twice as much time. So 666 calculated twice, because now it's twice as much time, is 1332 days. That's 3 days short of the 1335. Now if you turn to the same account in chapter 11 of Revelation, if you remember in Daniel, the 1260 days, it's the constant feature. It can't be stopped. That's explained in Revelation chapter 11. It's the preaching work. And it can't be stopped until it's finished. Verse 7 says, and when they have finished their witnessing, the wild beast that is sent out of the abyss will make war with them and conquer and kill them. Just trying to remember what I'm doing. So the 666 and the 666. So after the 1260 days, this beast comes up to finish God's people off. Then, as you read through this account, there is 3 days. It says, after the 3.5 days, Spirit of life from God entered into them, and they stood upon their feet, and great fear fell upon those beholding them. So, the wild beast kills God's people after the 1,260 days. So, from the 1,260, there has to be so much time. Revelation says that they raise up this image to the wild beast. Daniel says it takes 30 days, or the angel said to Daniel it takes 30 days, 1,290, before the image is in place. And then there is 45 days until the resurrection. So, that matches this account identically. 666 twice, 1,332 days, the dead for 3 days, then they rise up, 1,335 days. So the 666 matches Daniel perfectly. Now if you read carefully the promise made to Daniel, the angel said to him, after the 1,335 days, Daniel would receive a resurrection. It wasn't after all the days in the grave, it was after the days that had been prophesied about, the 1,335. Now if we go back to Revelation 13, what comes after the 666? The very next verse in chapter 14 describes the glorious resurrection to heaven. Jesus having come in the clouds and invited everybody, all Christians that are faithful, up into heaven. It says in the next verse, after the 666, and I saw and look the Lamb standing on Mount Zion, and with him 144,000. The first resurrection, just as the angel promised to Daniel. Now, just to finish this off, if you remember in 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, 13 through to 17, the Apostle Paul is speaking about when Jesus would come in the clouds, and the living and the dead would be raised up in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air. Well, if you remember, the next verses speak about how they'd be saying peace and security, and then instant destruction. If you go back to 11, it says that after they'd killed these witnesses, in verse 10, and those dwelling on the earth rejoiced over them and enjoyed themselves, and they will send gifts to one another, because these two witnesses, these two prophets, tormented those dwelling on the earth. And then after the 3 days of celebration, peace and security, the resurrection or the rapture occurs, which fear falls upon all of them. I hope you've understood this, because it's so important, because as Christians we need to know what to look for in these last days. And if you see any truth in this, then please tell all the Christians that you know, because by recognizing what is happening, we won't receive the mark, and thus we'll receive God's favour and the reward, just like Daniel the prophet is promised in Daniel chapter 12. I hope you read all the verses, because it's important to study. Don't take my word for anything. Please study and please help me with what you study. One last thing, the next video I'm going to do is I'm going to explain how Daniel and Revelation, what we're learning now, fits Matthew chapter 13, Matthew chapter 24, how to make sense of it with what's written in Daniel chapter 12 and Revelation 13. Anyway, thanks ever so much, and hopefully you've enjoyed it and understood it. Bye for now.